That if we are, as Vivek said, driven to something bigger than ourselves, why not America? What better than America? All right, welcome back to the party, everybody. I am your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Everybody hit that like and subscribe. You know what would do it for you, and let's party. So you guys know I'm a big fan of Vivek Ramaswamy, and I would love for him to be the front runner. I would love to see a Trump Vivek ticket, all of that stuff. Everything the guy says, he hasn't missed yet. He hasn't missed yet. Now, there's a long time for somebody to dig up skeletons, but so far, he looks like the guy that if we are taking practicality out of it, because I don't know how much sway he really has at this point, and that can change, but I would love for him to be the winner. And you guys know, again, if you've been watching for a while, that I am an atheist, but I'm very strongly in favor of Christian values because of what happens when you take away the religion that I don't believe exists, but you don't replace it with a moral structure. And so that's what Vivek was talking about on Timcast, and I think he is spot on.
What is a faith-based system or a religious system? It's a system where you can espouse otherwise illogical beliefs, right? Logic and reason could not lead you to these beliefs, but it has to be a different way of believing them.
Right. There is no logic that is going to lead you to believe that God exists. That's what people, all the time try to logic me into believing. It doesn't work that way. And probably have better logic than you, and I've been trying to logic myself into it for the last 20 years.
That's what we as a human being have a need for. We have a need to have beliefs that defy logic. And so if it's not going to be grounded in belief in a traditional religion, belief in God, even belief in a nation, a commitment to a nation is not something.
There you go. Belief in a nation, guys. It does not need to be Christianity. It does not need to be God. It just needs to have a bedrock. I'm always talking about building a secular American moral structure identity. That is what is missing, because you can still be Christian inside of this American identity. That's a huge part of our country's founding and all of that. It's a huge part of how we still want to behave today. But the belief claims are kind of irrelevant to the country. If you want to believe in the truth claims, fine, great. Nobody's trying to take that away from you. But what about the rest of us who can't? Do you want us to become socialists and Marxists and this and all that? Or do you want to have a better secular religion? Because don't get it twisted. Leftism absolutely is a secular religion. But not all religions are the same, secular or otherwise.
Something that flows out of logic, flows out of something that we as human beings have a desire for, have a need for, something bigger than ourselves. We're going to channel that impulse to something else. But the problem, and this is the danger of it, is not that it's not the time-tested faiths. It's the fact that we then trick ourselves into thinking that it isn't faith at all, right? Because when you go to church, you know what you're doing, right? You go to a temple, you know what you're doing. You're praying to God. You're exercising a side of your brain that's different than that which you're exercising if you're pouring chemicals in a lab and measuring things. But I think what's happened is, in absence of traditional faith and traditional beliefs, where we recognize that we're exercising our faith to believe in these things, we see the rise of new secular religions, secular cults instead, which we fail to recognize are actually religious belief systems.
Exactly. He's about to say like the climate thing, but the LGBT thing is a little bit more present in my mind.
Climate belief system. And I think the most dangerous religions are the ones that we fail to recognize as religions in the first place. And
the most dangerous religions are the religions that we fail to see are religions in the first place. You're not going to force people into your religion. We need to be able to understand what are the different options for the moral philosophy that one follows. And what are the options that will fit in a melting pot country like America, where not everybody's going to believe the same thing. We have Jews, Muslims, Christians, atheists, and otherwise, all in the same country, all under the same identity, but that identity has withered away into nothing. And so the people who can't be in the theistic religions end up turning to the government as their religion. And that is a bad thing. Does anybody disagree with that? I didn't think so. That's why you will definitely find a home at the Indian Jesus Discord server where the party never ends. That's right, 24/7 we are in there hanging out. And after every single live stream, we go in there for a live panel stream where it's not just you behind your keyboard. You're on screen with me and everybody else hanging out. You can come up if you want to. You don't have to. Either way, it is a grand old time. Come and join us.
Delude ourselves into thinking that it's actually logic or reason that led us there.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what's happening in the country today.
Well, there's a few things I'd say in response to that. Firstly, ultimately, I do agree with the point that these ideological systems are more or less religions, but rather than having a personal God, they have a much more abstract God, and it generally ends up boiling down to a form of self-worship, usually.
And so, again, the question is, if you're, I understand that, especially Seamus as the Catholic, if you could get them back into the church, then I understand why you would want that. But if we're being realistic, you know that there are some people like myself who grew up in the Catholic Church, confirmed in the Methodist Church, and it was only after I was trying to seek out more from God, a better relationship with God, understanding the Bible as it actually is, instead of just listening to the sermons on Sunday, instead of just listening to the little passages they would give me in Sunday school. Once I really start to see the whole picture, there simply is no way that I can be a part of that faith. And so, again, if you're not going to get people back into your faith, then should we not at least present an alternative that you're okay with?
But I would push back against one part of this. I agree that there are many religious systems where the faith does conflict with reason. I don't believe faith has to conflict with reason. And I would say part of what's so insidious about this kind of left-wing cult we're seeing and a lot of these bizarre new ideas is it directly does conflict with reason. I think there are elements within divine revelation that a person could not have reason to on their own, but it doesn't contradict reason, or it's not asking you to accept something which is like completely and totally absurd, such as
there's a big man in the sky who knows everything all the time, but cares about whether or not you jerk off.
Your biological sex can change on a daily basis.
So those things are, and if we're talking about dogmatic beliefs, those would be pretty even now, wouldn't they? Just saying. What did Vivek just say? Failing to recognize a religion is a bad thing.
It gives you ideally the tools, and this isn't its singular purpose, but it does give you the tools, if it's the right system, to interact with the world in a way which is actually productive and helpful. And these new kind of cultist beliefs don't. So
they don't, but that doesn't mean that every single ideology that isn't based on God will be exactly like that. If we set the terms of morality, we can just follow that. I've been dying to get this idea specifically in front of Seamus, because I know he's a strong Catholic, and I would never try to say, that he would push for people to be part of this secular religion. But knowing that there are people like me who agree with all of his values, or most of his values, and agree with most of his politics, that if we are, as Vivek said, driven to something bigger than ourselves, why not America? What better than America? If fine, you say God, let's say second best. Tell me that America is not at least the second best thing that you can worship. It's just that simple, guys. It's just that simple. So, I mean, definitely go check out the rest of the video. But I mean, it was just a perfect reinforcement of the things that I talk about every single day. Every single day, I talk about how we need to come together, even though we may have different ideological beliefs, because we have the same moral values. Because the people who are on the other side of this are not fighting about whether they don't care how they arrived at the value. Like, oh, you think a man can become a female? I think a man can become a female too. All right, we're best friends. It's not, well, I mean, I think a man can turn into a female, but it's only because of this. And you think a man can turn into a female because of that. So, we can't be on the same team. That's not how they do things. So if you want to beat them, you have to be better than them. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Once again, I have been your host, Lutch, a.k.a. the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Until next time, guys, I am out of here. Peace.